I come every year. It's very nice to be here. I know there are many young students. And today my talk is about the future of AI. You will see examples of the work that we do now, but especially in this last part of my talk, I want you to reflect on what's coming after transformers and LLMs and their applications in robotics. You will not see any mathematical equations, although I'm an Institute of Mathematics here. Of course, the mathematics is behind the work that you will see given via robot demos. We have robots, so you will see robot behavior. So what's the context of my research specifically at the University of Manchester in the UK? Is robots supporting older people in their home. Let's say I can have a robot when I'm getting older that makes me a cup of tea, or I can ask the robot to help me take medicines, or do some housework. There are applications in robot tutors for education. You can imagine teachers having helpers, which are robots helping, for example, children to practice mathematics. And today we are going to talk also about number learning in robots and in children. Another area is cobot, collaborative robots. People and robots that work together in a factory. And if I'm taking turns with the robot to assemble an object, for example, I need to look at the robot eyes. The robot needs to look at my eyes. When I look at each other's eyes, we call it social gaze. We understand each other's minds, each other's intentions. And you will see examples in a moment. I'm also involved a lot in research in China. I'm a chief robotic scientist for Beijing Taishan Technology. They build tactile sensors. Apparently, 80% of the humanoid robots in China, there are very many at the moment, use their technologies. The fingertip are also other types of, actually these are touchless sensors, capacitor sensors that see you even before you touch the system. So in all this context, the person, the human, is at the center of the system. Even if we have a robot that we send to Mars, the robot is there for us. So the robot needs to at least talk to us, communicate to us, send us data, visualize the data. We need to talk to the robot. We need to know what the robot is doing. So communication, it's where I specialize. Language communication, speech, but also gestures. We say social gaze, non-verbal communication. But also other aspects of trust. I can have the most powerful robot, but if I don't trust the robot, I'm not going to use it in my home, for example. So let's focus on one specific project in which I worked in the past. This was a European project. In Europe, we have many projects where you need at least 3 countries, from 3 different European countries, and must work together to get this joint funding. In this project called Robot Era, we had 3 robots that were working together. One robot in your home was making you the washing or the cup of tea. Then there are robots outside that do the shopping for you, bring it to the pure robot and so on. But let's imagine I want to design, program a robot to understand spoken language, and in particular the sentence, can you make me a cup of tea? I'm Italian. I moved to the UK 30 years ago, maybe because I don't like coffee, I like tea. And I'm in China, so it's the best place to put tea, really. So if I'm getting older, when this robot will be with me one day, they have to be capable of understanding the instructions, can you make me a cup of tea? Now, what can we do today? Many people say, this problem is solved. Let's ask an LLM, a large language model, or VLA, Visual Language Action Model, a model that puts together tokens, spoken words, let's say, visual, and then action to control the robot. So let's ask ChatGPT or any of the system, this DeepSeek, whatever you want to use, for the instruction. If I talk to ChatGPT, and this is what I did a few months ago, make me a cup of tea, what do I get? A set of instructions, which is not good. I have a robot in my home because I'm getting old, I need help. I don't want a recipe to make my own cup of tea. I need the robot to make this. So to be able to do this, the robot needs to understand, this is central in my talk today, understand what words mean. Language has many components. Some are called lexical, words, tokens. Others are phonetics, the sounds. Others are semantic, the meanings. And then there is something called pragmatics. Pragmatics is the fact that you use language to interact physically. So if I ask make a cup of tea, the answer is not, here is a recipe. The answer is a cup of tea in my hands. Pragmatics, the meaning of, the contextual meaning of words. So text only or LLM only is not a solution. Another better solution would be maybe to train a VLA, Visual Language Action Model. To do this, we need to have visual images, actions, and words. So by chance, if you go in the internet and search for making a cup of tea, you find this British Standard Institute's perfect way to make a cup of tea. Now, regardless of their perfect way, what matters here is that I now have multimodal information to help the robot start to understand what it means to make a cup of tea. It means to recognize a teapot, to recognize a cup, to recognize that there are liquids of different colors. Transparent is water, darker is tea, and maybe I like my tea weak, not very strong, right? And I like one spoon of sugar or no sugar or some sugar. These words are important. Some, one, I will get back to this. But also, so I have my images. These are very easy for a machine learning system to recognize, relatively easy. I have words, which you would think it's very easy for a system to handle, but 80% approximately of the words which are in the system, that I highlighted them, are abstract words. 20% are concrete words. Concrete words are words like milk, cup, pot, which I can visually, concretely visualize. Not only visual, it could be tactile, right? Hot might mean that my sensors, my temperature sensors tells me, or my pain sensors tell me about this. But the rest is actually abstract words. So what's up? What's to? What's for? Numbers. We are in mathematics here. And so on. Out, around. These are abstract words. Words for which it is very hard to have a visual representation or a sensory motor representation. It doesn't have to be visual. Now, be aware, scientific research, 80% of the words that I'm using, that you use when you talk to me as grown-ups, these are abstract words. Only 20% are concrete words, which reflects what we have here. But when we are babies, the importance of starting small, we'll get back to this at the end, 80% of what we say as babies are concrete words, only 20% are abstract. And then we switch into abstract thinking. Again, mathematics, we start very concrete, right? We count our fingers, different gestures, and then we go into mental mathematics. So we have to consider this. If we want to teach a robot to understand words and language and pragmatics, the robot must understand concrete words, easy for machine learning, abstract words, less easy. But there are ways to do this. Now, let's go back a bit to ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and all these LLMs. Just be aware, 1966, 60 years ago, we had the first ChatGPT called ELIZA. If you Google Baidu ELIZA, you can talk to ELIZA. ELIZA was a text communication system that implemented a psychotherapist. It was a proof of concept. It's a very simple system, rule-based system. It's quite an interesting bit. So we are kind of reinventing the wheel, but this is part of the message I want to say today. If we go back to past intuitions of our pioneers, we can get insights on how to do things better and to look at the future by grounding our science on the past insights. So, but if we consider ELIZA, Siri, any of these systems, it is important to say these cannot understand the words. At LLM, this is a statement I'm going to make. When I give this talk, 1/3 of you will disagree with me, and sometimes we have the same question repeated to me, and then I say, okay, let's talk about this later. So 1/3 of you will disagree with me, 2/3 hopefully not. So LLMs do not understand words. A pure token-based LLM. VLA, maybe they do. LLMs, they don't. So if I have a ChatGPT ELIZA, there is no understanding whatsoever. And I'm going to convince you by referring again to philosophy. How many of you, we are in China, how many of you have heard, raise your hand, of the Chinese room experiment? Not many, which is good. When I first came to China 20 years ago and I presented some of these concepts, I was kind of surprised. Of course, it makes sense. John Searle, American philosophers, created this thought experiment. And I'm going to show you a video which demonstrates this nicely.
The philosopher John Searle was chewing on this problem. And he came up with a thought experiment that gets right at the heart of it. And he called this the Chinese room. The experiment goes like this. I'm locked in a room. Outside, there's someone who only communicates in Chinese. She writes out some questions and then posts those to me in the room. Now, I don't speak Chinese, but I do have these books, and they give me instructions on exactly what to do with these symbols. So I look in the book, and if I can find a match to the symbols, then the book tells me exactly how to respond. So I can look up this response. That matches. So now I can post this as the reply to the message I received. When our Chinese speaker receives the message, that makes perfect sense to her.
您最喜欢哪一本书？哪里是中国的首都？你梦里梦到什么？
As far as she's concerned, we're having a conversation in her language. Just by following a set of instructions, I can convince somebody on the outside that I speak Chinese. And if I have a large enough set of response books, I can have a conversation about anything. But here's the important part. I, the operator, do not understand Chinese. I can manipulate symbols all day long.
So I, the operator, do not understand Chinese, but he communicates in Chinese. And if he has enough tokens, words we call them now, he can have a conversation. For the Chinese speaker, David understands Chinese. So do we agree that David does not understand Chinese, even if he can give you the impression, you native speakers, that he understands this? Can we agree on this? So even if 1/3 will disagree on my point here, David does not understand Chinese. And to convince you further, I'm going to run an experiment in a different language, and you are going to speak to me my language, not Italian, without understanding it. Now, let me say, I call this now the LLM room experiment. Why? Because a written question is a prompt that you give to the system, and an answer, right, is what you get. What's the system doing? Matching symbols to symbol statistics. This is what an LLM does, let's be honest. So let's now run a new version of this experiment. We are going to, I know you are the brightest, some of the brightest students in China, so please be cooperative and try to be brave and help me in this talk by answering this question in this language that you don't know. And if you know other languages which have similar sounds or words, please don't make an effort to think of the word. Think, for me, Chinese is pictures, right? For you, Latin characters should be pictures, no meaning, just pictures. So the question I'm going to ask you, and I need one of you please to reply, is quanti anni avevi la picciotta? Quanti anni avevi la picciotta? These are the symbols, questions, answers. Remember in the book that David used, there are 2 pages, question, you prompt, match the prompt somewhere there, and then you build the answer. You go here if needed, the dictionary, and you give me an answer. Please, give me an answer. If you make a mistake, it's good because we want to show the process. This is the whole point of the talk. It's not to get the right answer, it's to understand the process. So, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? No, he's cheating. Okay, he knows he's cheating. So, this is not good because we need somebody with no understanding. So, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? You are clever students, I thought. La picciotta avevi e anni. Good. What did you do? Quanti anni avevi? You matched the question right. And you said la picciotta. Picciotta, matching. Remember, it's all matching. It's picture matching. La picciotta avevi, you said A, which is good. We want to convert this A into something else. So what do? Let's go to the context, the dictionary. Let's look for picciotta, 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 picciotta. Let's look for anni, anni, anni. Picciotta, anni, they are near. In neural networks, you have co-activations, and therefore, anni becomes setti. This is pure statistical or neural network activations. So I'm going to run the animation. Let's match the first part, which is easy. We match now the variable. Good. This is our prompt. Then we start to build the question. La X, la picciotta, because X is picciotta. Avi, the tricky bit. Anni, Anni. This is the way our brain works. Activation, activation, activation. If two things are co-activated, they spike the answer. So very good. So as far as I'm concerned, if you remember the video, David said, as far as she's concerned, we are having a conversation in her language. As far as I'm concerned, we are having a conversation in Sicilian dialect. Okay? 50% similar to Italian, Anni is similar to Italian, to Spanish. As picciotta is a word that only exists in Sicily, unless you watch the Padrino, the Godfather movie, where picciotto are one of the words used to refer to the mafia, junior people in the mafia. But it means, actually no, I'm not telling you what it means yet. At the moment, for me, Chinese characters are pictures, drawings. There is no meaning. For you, these words in Sicilian have no meanings. So, do you understand Sicilian? Do you understand? No. But you were able to talk to me. So, I might think you know Sicilian, and you went to Sicily, right? The same is in the video. This is very important. You do not understand Sicilian yet. And if you are robots, I'm Sicilian. When we get old, we go back to speaking our original language. I speak Sicilian to my family. So I want to ask for a cup of tea in Sicilian. So how do we understand Sicilian? So one philosopher, John Cern, invented the Chinese room experiment to make us reflect on the fact that a computer, a machine that matches symbols, has no meanings, no understanding. Another philosopher, Quine, tells us that if we want to understand how people construct the meaning of words, this is very hard. Because now I'm going to run another experiment with you. So this is a thought experiment, another philosophical experiment. Let's pretend we are anthropologists, linguists. We go to the Amazon, South America. We discover a new tribe which has never been in contact with Western or Chinese society. And we want to understand the words that they use. And they say gabagai when we and us and them are in the Amazon and we see these. So what do you think, as an anthropologist, linguist, I should think the meaning of gabagai is? And please, I need more than one answer, and all your answers will be correct. This is the point of Quine. There is no way to know the meaning of words in a single, we call it one shot now. Okay, so what are the possible meanings of gabagai? I need 3 answers, please. What are the possible meanings? What could it mean? Gabagai. Hello, very good. Rabbit, excellent. Excellent. I will tell you why. Very good is also excellent. Another meaning. Eye, why the whole animal? It could be eyes, fair, beautiful, hungry. It could be green, grass. It could be anything. This is the whole point of Quine. The indeterminacy of discovering meanings at the beginning. There is a process that we can solve. Why did I say excellent for rabbit? And if I were to do a statistics, if I force each of you to tell me a meaning, write a meaning, and then I do the statistics, the majority of you would say rabbit. Some will say yellow, some will say green, very few will say grass. Why? Because we as babies have evolved or have learned mechanisms in language learning. One of these mechanisms, they're called cognitive biases. It's called shape bias. A child, 2 years of age, 1.5, 2 years of age, when we are starting to learn individual words, by default, as a bias, attribute the word to the main shape. What's the most salient shape here? Rabbit. Why? It's bigger. It's in the middle. Right? Girl is big, but it's on the side. Sometimes it's brightest. The color is more bright. There are many reasons why some shapes are. So the majority of you should say gabagai because you are still babies in your hearts. It's the real reason. But there are more mechanisms in child development. The same people use the word gabagai when we look at this. So is rabbit a good hypothesis? Not. The shape bias confused us. What are the possible meanings of gabagai? Shape bias. Grass, it's good, but animal. What I'm saying, there is one shape here, shape bias, in the middle. It's a dog. It cannot be dog because it's gabagai, it's rabbit, right? What common in the two? Animal or puppy. So the shape bias will tell us it's an animal. But you are right, because it could still be green. Again, it's a philosophy experiment, it means nothing. It's an invented word. So all the answers are correct. But what are we doing? We're using these biases, shape bias. Also, we are using cross-situational learning. We learn across situation. That's why we think it's rabbit. No, it's not rabbit, it's animal. And then maybe we see something else. We see no animals. We say gabagai, it must be in green. This is very important because I want you to understand that learning the meaning of words is not straightforward. If I'm a robot, how am I learning the meaning of words? But again, you were babies, I was a baby, and I have to learn Sicilian, English, Italian. So how did we do this? We do this with a mechanism called grounding. Grounding is mapping words into physical, sensory motor experience. I shouldn't say physical experience. Emotional, if I'm worried, if I'm happy, I don't have a physical explanation, although there are actually some chemical mechanisms in my body that creates this sensation. So what's the meaning of, now I'm going to make the word of Sicilian easy. What's the meaning of picciotta in Sicilian? This is easy. Girl. Why it's easy? Because there is one shape bias. Actually, this is not easy. Quine says no. It could be eyes, it could be nose, it could be happy, right? It could be young, the concept of young, which is kind of visually there, but not obvious. But in this case, girl is correct. What's the meaning of ovo? Very easy. Please say it. Egg. Why? Because there is one shape, no variations in color or size, although here size doesn't matter. Addina is chicken. C mensa is a bit trickier, right? It could be seeds, pumpkin seeds, food, dry fruit, and so on. Concrete words. It's easy to map this into shapes or properties of shapes. Abstract words. What are the meanings of picca? 3, many eggs, right? Ovo, one egg, picca, many eggs. Maybe in Italian, in Sicilian, we change words. It could be food, right? Now, cross-situational learning. What's picca? It's not 3 anymore. It's not eggs anymore. It could still be food. What's picca? It could still be food, but no. Why would you use 2 words for food, right? Picca sai. What's the meaning of picca? What's picca? Several is assai. Picca is fewer, right? Fewer. That's very good. These are quantities. This is mathematics. We call them fuzzy quantifiers in psychology. Fuzzy quantifiers. Quantities which are indeterminate in the sense of the actual quantity doesn't matter. It's more the overall comparative value that matters. And then another word in Sicilian, manciare. What's manciare? Mr. Bean, smiling, hungry. But if I show you this, if I show you this, it's easier. What's the meaning of manciare? It's the action, right? Because we are looking at a video. It's to eat, the action or the verb of eating. Okay, so now you know Sicilian. You know some Sicilian words. Why? Because like in making a cup of tea, I'm showing you multimodal training examples of images and words, including abstract concepts like quantities, right? And actions like to eat. So why are we doing this? So we started from philosophy. We went into the example of Sicilian. Now we reflect on our approach. This is the approach, we call it epistemological. The philosophical, methodological approach to my research is to model language learning in children by building robot models of the same mechanisms. Of course, if I do this, I build a robot they can learn language. If I have a robot that learns Sicilian, it can make me a cup of tea. So the robot can understand Sicilian. Now, there are many meanings of understanding. We can talk about this in the questions later. So what do we do in our research? We start small. We start with slow learning. We show a few words. We don't do large data. Let's scroll the whole web. Let's read all books ever written in the world, which are available, and I learn about dogs, animals, and so on. No. We start very slow. We become fast. Vocabulary expert, 2 years of age. We started 18 months, 1.5 years of age. 2 years of age, we start to learn individual words very fast. So we want to be fast, but we might have to start slow. We use our body for language learning, even if language is kind of abstract words. No, we learn by playing with things, and you will see examples later. We have a brain which is very modular. Vision is here, motor control is here, speech processing, audio processing is here, and so on. Very modular. But people have shown, Uwe Müller, that when we think of words, the motor areas, the perceptual areas are active. So it's not only the sound that matters. If you think an LLM is just a sound matching statistical mechanism, a VLA, if you want, is something more integrated. And then finally, we are social people. To be social, to understand each other, we have something called theory of mind. Theory of mind is understanding that you have your own preferences, you want to do something, that you like to do things fast, slow, and so on. This area of research is called developmental robotics, because if you study child development, we say developmental psychology or developmental cognition. Cognitive robotics refers to the wider area, and this means we need people. I'm a computer scientist, although I formally studied psychology once. Computer scientist that programs our AI algorithms, people that build our robots. Rosetta Stone, this is the stone that allowed us to translate Greek and Egyptian, and I don't know the other language, the British Museum in London, and then psychology and so on. I've written 2 textbooks on this, developmental robotics 10 years ago, more recently the textbook of cognitive robotics, and I'm very proud to say that we have a Chinese translation of this book, and also they are working on the Chinese translation of the cognitive robotics. It should be ready in 2026. They said this a year ago for 25, but it's happening. So make sure when you go back to your university or your schools that you buy a book. No, you ask your school and university to buy a book. Okay, so let's now stop with theory. Let's see, what do you do? I'm a roboticist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a psychologist anymore. I'm professional. I don't do research in psychology. I work with people in psychology. So what do? We study how language can be learned via this embodiment mechanism. The way to do this is working with psychologists. Baby labs are psychology labs with babies used for observation experiments. We work with Linda Smith in Indiana, people in Plymouth, and now I work a lot with people in Milan on social aspects of interaction. And we model steps in development. This is birth, 3 of age, and we model in the first year, it's all about phonetics. We learn the sound of the language in the culture in which we are born. Here, we start to learn individual words and concepts and categories, especially concrete words. Dog, rabbit, yellow, and so on. And then later, we start to learn more complex words. We start to put words together and so on. Now, let's look at an experiment of how we do things. This is a real study from a few years ago. You can see we use very kind of realistic mechanisms from psychology. We already know about the shape bias. We extract shape from the camera of the robot. We extract color. We combine these concepts together because they are multi-components. Also, we use attention It's called selective attention. I want you to pay attention to one thing at a time to learn. We'll go back to attention later. Attention is all you need. Remember the transformer paper? No, selective attention is all you need in development. So selective attention, how do I get you to pay attention? How do I get the child to pay attention to me? We call the person, the child, we shake their hands, we talk to them, right? We implement a similar mechanism. Okay, so how we are AI scientists. So where is the AI? The AI is a series of neural networks. In this previous version, we didn't have transformers or visual transformers or CNNs. So we do self-organizing maps to represent and extract a continuum representation of different colors and the similarity of color space, shape, space, body. Body is important, I said. The embodiment is key here. So my cortex related to motor sensation and motor control is something called somatotopic map. Somatotopic means leg is here, now I don't remember exactly, I think it's face, arm, and leg. Okay, so the body represents space, body using space. The sum used for spatial maps do the same. So we recreate this mechanism and then we have learning. So we do pre-training. You are now all familiar with pre-training. We pre-train to many types of colors and shapes, and then we do the learning of language. We could say runtime during the experiment. When Tony Morse, my collaborator, said, this activates the learning of these parameters, connections. We use unsupervised Hebbian learning for those familiar with systems. We compare child data with robot data, and there is no time today to discuss this. We have been able to predict the result, the behavior of children by making additional experiments in our robot models. But now let's look at another aspect of language learning, which is a bit more complex than just looking at things. Look at the study where a child has a camera in the head, the parent has a camera in the head, mom's view, child's view. Look how different the world looks when you're learning the task of the names of these abstract objects. No abstract, these new invented objects. Why am I stopping here? Because if I'm a child and I hear the word gavagai or the word microphone, if I'm a child and I'm playing with this microphone, what's my shape bias doing here? Everything. There is one shape only. I don't have to worry. There is no, there is some background, but it's easy, right? To think that microphone means this object. If I see the world as a parent, this is very complicated, right? What's microphone? Of course, the parent knows, but you can see, I used to think of language learning in robots as a problem where you have many objects, you look at the objects, you try to find the most relevant object and then you activate it. No. If we add this mechanism, active learning, we simplify the world. I don't need to be a very complicated roboticist as to invent a task. No, I don't need to invent a task. I need to copy a child development mechanism, which is exactly what we do. So then we compare kind of passive learning from active learning. This is called scaffolding. When you scaffold, you structure, simplify the learning task. Passive learning, this is a bottle, but I have two objects as a robot to see. This is robot's view. This is a cell phone, I have three objects, right? Hard. Let's make it easy. Parent, help the child, scaffold the environment, simplify the environment. Cap, what's cap? There is only one object, easy. Okay, so this is to show you how we do this for concrete words. Nowadays, you can use CNN, visual transformers, doesn't really matter, this is relatively easy. Now, how do I teach the robot that I like some sugar in my tea? Some. Remember some? Picca, sai? Picca. I like picca sugar. How do we do this? How do we teach robots about numbers to become mathematicians like you? How do we do this? Remember child development. How do we learn to count? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we go towards abstract mathematics, mental mathematics. How can we do this with robots? We've been doing this. We teach robots to count using gestures. In some experiments, small gestures. In other experiments, big gestures. Child psychology showed that if you make it easy, scaffold, big, ample gestures, you learn faster. You learn to count faster. 2 plus 2, you're counting and adding your numbers. These are data from child psychology, robot data. They show that if you are passively counting without using gestures or observing gestures, your performance is 50%. If you ask the child or the robot to point, like in this case, or ask the child, or if you show the child a puppet pointing at the objects, performance increases. So passive, active, scaffolding. You see how we can have these robots by using the mechanism. We don't want to throw as much data as possible. We need fewer data, but use this data in a clever way. Why is it better? We will be faster. We save energy, and then we'll talk about this later when we criticize the LLMs. Okay, because it's now time, I have 10, 15 minutes, 15 minutes to criticize the LLM. Some of you will hate me, which is good. We are doing science. Science is based on dialectic and theory. You prove that my theory is wrong or right, and then you go to the next level. So LLMs, robots, and language. So first, the positives. I can't believe it's working. They are so powerful. I've been doing neural network for 30 years. Okay, we struggle to make them do interesting stuff. Now it produces text in any language. It's unbelievable. It can do reasoning and so on. That's Tony Perpame, my colleague who is enthusiastic about LLMs in robotics, the opposite of me. But he works on social robotics. So the idea is, for example, if I want to have a chatbot, it's like a robotic Alexa, Amazon Alexa or other system that we have nowadays. Then ChatGPTs are good. Of course, there are problems how you constrain, personalize the system, but in principle, it's good. Where else is good? Not only LLMs, VLAs, deep learning mechanisms, visual transformers. For vision, very good. Speech, impressive. Now speech understanding. Autobiographical memory, you can reconstruct your history by using these mechanisms. But for me, an LLM in robotics is just a knowledge base. In the past, we used to have if-then rules about what to do in each context. Now, the rules and these contexts are derived from the data. Very expensive way to do it, but it is a good and impressive way. Let's go from LLMs primarily to VLA in general and world models. It's a new way to look at these mechanisms. Multimodal is important. I think I demonstrated this from the beginning. We cannot have speech only, words only, no way. And then if you do the training multimodal, you get representation. Do we get human-like grounding? This is for debate. I'm doing some scientific investigation of this. I believe we can get some of these. Remember, there are many meanings of understanding. The basic one, I individually understand the world by connecting words into my physical sensory experience. And then understanding is, I'm aware that I understand. I know that you understand like me. So that's another component. But let's reflect on what's the problem, why we need to do research on new systems. We cannot stop at transformers. Just be aware, you are young, some of us are less young. My students in 2012-13, when they started to join my lab, they all wanted to do CNN, convolutional neural networks. They didn't want to do MLPs or whatever we used to do, self-organizing maps. Now, they don't want to do CNNs, they want to do transformers, right? They want to do So this changes, just be aware, the world changes fast. It's not only that. So let's reflect on how to change these things. So problems with LLMs. First, this shouldn't be called language models. Language is, I said at the beginning, phonetic, semantic, lexical, words, tokens, by its pragmatics and its word and understanding. There is no understanding there. There is meaning representation, not in the system, but you can attribute some meaning. So there is no understanding. Again, like I said, we disagree, it's fine, there is no understanding. David Eagleman has no understanding of Chinese. Sorry if I pick on you, you have no understanding of Sicilian, even if you can speak Sicilian to me. The same is an LLM. We think you understand, I think you were in Sicily. We think David must understand some Chinese, but there is no understanding. And then key in cognition is working memory, short-term memory. You know, you say things, I have few words, I combine words, or if it's a problem, you know, assumption, state of things, and then how I reason and so on. So we need working, we call it short-term memory. Long-term memory is when I memorize something about knowledge of the world. The dictionary is long-term memory. What's a dog? A dog is an animal that barks with 4 legs and so on. And there is no time representation. For those of you who are familiar with neural networks, we have feed-forward, multi-layer perceptron, CNNs, and transformers, input, output. So how do we do time? There are tricks. But let's pretend I want to design a Sicilian LLM. What do? I collect all possible questions in Sicilian language about things. These are the examples I use in my previous exercise. Quanti anni avevi la picciotta? La picciotta avevi 7 anni. Quanti anni aveva la zanzina? La zanzina avevi 70 anni. I have all these examples. I give it to my LLM, my transformer. I can guarantee it will learn very easily. Now, let's ask a transformer, not ChatGPT, DeepSeek, you know. When you use ChatGPT, we don't use an LLM. We use now a system of tools. Let's focus only on the engine, the real transformer. Let's give this prompt to the transformer. Quanti anni avevi la picciotta? Now, can you tell me what will the transformer say? I'll show you the previous training example. Sorry, I shouldn't have touched. These are the examples. Question and answer. Quanti anni la picciotta? La picciotta aveva 7 anni. So, I hope you didn't pay too much attention to my previous animation. Quanti anni aveva la picciotta? What's the correct answer for a transformer? Please say it. If it's wrong, it's good, because this is the whole point. We want to reflect on what are the alternatives. What's the answer? What does the transformer do? The transformer selects the next word, la. The transformer, this is what it does. We predict it by creating a sequence, but the transformer, if you say it, how old is the girl? This is the meaning. How old is the girl? The transformer doesn't have to say, I read it's about a girl is young. I read girls are young. Young is normally 0 to 10. So I read she's 7 in the story on the Sicilian Godfather, right? So how old is the girl? The real answer of a cognitive system, of a robot, should be 7. Or should be, the girl is 7 because blah, blah, blah. Right? This is what the answer should be. A cognitive system should do this. The LLM doesn't do this. The LLM says, how old is the girl? What's the answer of how old is? How old is? Girl is female, the article la. So la is what it does. And then what do? We chain the prompt with the prediction, and now we ask the transformer, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? La picciotta. Then we chain it. The last question we ask is not quanti anni avevi la picciotta, but we ask, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? La picciotta avevi 7 anni. So don't forget this example. This is the way LLMs reason. Now, I have to prepare the slide. If I change the order of this is number 1, number 2, number 3. If I change the order, the answer will be the same, meaning there is no order. It's me creating the order. Okay? You do the same if you do reasoning models. You decompose the problem, it's still one-word prediction. So there is no time. Do we agree there is no time? We attribute time. There is no understanding. We attribute understanding. But the system doesn't think about time. It thinks about what's the statistical correspondence of, within my dictionary, of words after this prompt, according to what I read. With some generalization, which we call also hallucinations. Hallucinations are the power, the good aspects of neural networks. They are not the negative aspects. This is the whole point of using a neural network, because it can generalize. Of course, if you use a neural network as a truth teller, that's another issue. We are using the wrong tool. But let's talk about this later. Another criticism, there is no embodiment. I think it's only tokens. for me, I'm a psychologist who turned AI scientist, who turned roboticist in the last 20 years of my career, 30 years now. So I've been dreaming, I've been doing neural networks. I'm part of the PDP group. For those that studied neural network psychology in 1986, Ramerat McClelland produced the book PDP, Neural Networks, and Jeff Hinton was the author of the paper for the invention of the backpropagation algorithm, which we still use now. So for me, the most non-cognitive, why? Because there is no embodiment, there is no time, there is no understanding, and attention is not all you need. Selective attention is all you need. When I read some text, even if my book is big, I don't see all the words in the book at the same time. This is what a transformer does. If a transformer has 100,000 tokens, let's pretend one token equals one word, the transformer can see at the same time 100,000 words of the book. We don't do this. If I read the book, even if the 100,000 words are there, I don't see them. I don't want to look at them. I want to look at the sentence and read 1, 2, 3 words. And maybe I go back to read the previous sentence. I don't pay attention to all the possible statistical respondents between systems. So attention it's a good trick to do this data mining exercise in a transformer. This is what I call it, but not from a cognitive point. And then let's not talk about data, the idea that I need to read all the books published in the world in all the languages to be able to speak. A 10-year-old child, how many books has he or she read? Tens, hundreds in a language, simple books, and their proficiency is better than an LLM. They think, they pay attention to, they reason, they don't just predict the next one. And then, this is involved, forget about AGI. Okay, when Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and other CEOs need your money, they need to sell you a dream. The bigger the dream, the more money they will give them because you think you make lots of profit. So the biggest dream is AGI. AGI means human-like intelligence, actually super intelligence, artificial general intelligence. There will be no AGI with a transformer, I can guarantee this. But that's part of the debate also. You might disagree, but remember, these are CEOs. Let's go to a conference where we discuss the science of AGI. What's AGI? Is a calculator an AGI system? Because a calculator is a system which has achieved singularity. Singularity, the moment in which the machine intelligence reaches human intelligence and becomes better. Calculator is better than me and any of you super mathematicians here at doing multiplications, right? We have an AGI. Is this AGI? So that's science. Is not, but not transformer. Transformer, no AGI. So what can we do? Of course, we want to conclude on a positive note. I have 3 minutes. So this is just shows the numbers of impossible data training. What can we do? Okay, beyond starting small, what can we do? There is pre-existing structure in the brain. A transformer is a fully connected system with very complex attention mechanisms. Our brain, when we are born, has structures. The retina sends connections only to some part of the thalamus, and then it goes to the back of the brain, not to all the brain. So we evolved with evolution structures in the brain. Maybe adding structure would be a good idea. Maturation. The brain goes through maturation mechanisms. We cannot substitute a neuron that dies. We cannot add or cut connections in a significant way, although science is now discovering some mechanisms, because there are critical periods where we start in early development, we prune, we cut lots of the early connections, and then we stick to those, more or less, and we start to, we say, fine-tune them. We have persisting conceptual knowledge. Color perception could have some components which come with the structure of the brain, which comes with the sensing and so on. We are social systems, interactive. We are not individuals. We are multimodal systems. I don't need to stress this anymore. And then, of course, we are capable of doing long-term and short-term. Transformers have a super long-term memory. You read hundreds of thousands of books and you remember every combination of words, more or less. I don't remember the combination of words of a book I read yesterday, right? I remember the concepts. So small, not large data and models. This is the message. And then to conclude, why do I chose this title? 1993, Jeff Hellman, San Diego. He was part of the PDP group, the 1986 Brammer, McClelland, Hellman, Hinton group. He wrote this paper where he showed that you can take a small network which cannot learn a complex linguistic structure. If you give lots of data, you make it worse. How can you make it learn? Curriculum learning, start with simple examples and small, few, simple, and then increase the complexity. One mechanism in the data. The second mechanism is in the memory, in the attention. You can say in this case is memory. You don't allow the transformer to remember everything or the transformer to pay attention to everything. On the contrary, at the beginning, the transformer or the neural network pays attention. Here, in this case, it remembers 2, 3 words, and then 4 words, and then 5 words. So the same small network with huge data, no learning. A relatively complex task, not super complex. Small data or small brain, small maturation helps you, the small network, to be a grown-up. So no, I should, don't misunderstand me. The conclusion is, let's keep using transformers because they are important and we need to use them, we need to understand what to do. But if we want to look at the future of cognition and intelligence and AGI, this is not the way to do it. We need to look at new mechanisms. And I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Cangelosi, for this excellent talk. And any questions from the audience?
Thanks for the wonderful talk. I'm just trying to figure out what you mean by understanding, because I think in your examples, understanding basically means they need a mapping from the language to the real world objects. But in LLMs, basically, like say we ask LLM to solve math problems, understanding basically means like causality, right? And also if we see like LLM can generalize from the training document to some other documents, we say it understands. So I'm just curious, in this robotics and LLM scenarios, maybe understanding mean different things.
Okay, that's a very good point. So let me say this. David Eagleman, as Sicilian, except me, who grew up in Sicily, have no understanding of Sicilians. But if you go in David Eagleman algorithm to do the Chinese mapping, and he says, if you give me a large enough set of data, I will start to have a conversation. Why? Because you realize, oh, the word dog, bark, comes together. Dog and cat, they often come together, not always. Dog and humans come together. Dog and rock, they never come together. So the system will create a structure. So in the transformers, LLM, there is structure, which comes from the statistical learning, but there is no understanding. We call it dog, animal, young, barking. We give it meanings. The system has discovered the regularity, but the system doesn't use such a knowledge to solve the problem. Of course, it uses the statistical respondents to predict the word, and then we also add another mechanism, this chain of thought or chain of words, which allow this. So basic understanding is autonomously, as an LLM, you understand the world, there is no way. Autonomously, you build a structure. Yes, it does build a structure from these examples, which is purely token. Causality, there is no causality, but there is statistical correspondence between tokens, which we call it causality. There is statistical correspondence between tokens, which we call animals, dog and cats and fish and so on.
Thank you for your inspiring talk. My background, I'm a logician, so I am more in that old kind of world of Elisa and so. And actually, the last couple of slides that you presented about going back to small, that would be probably, what is your take on this combining rule-based and data-based systems, which if we bring in some logic, we can bring some semantics as well, and then maybe that could be a step forward.
Okay. So I've been doing neural networks and AI for 30 years, so I agree we need to combine the two together. Also, there are different levels of understanding and explanation of the system. There are different needs. So definitely we need to work on this. One way people are doing is to implement a rule-based system into this graph. That's one mechanism. If we want to optimize the reasoning, let's say, between these components. But the general message to the younger audience is there is no single right answer. Okay, let's not all do the same thing. Let's do something different, including. I think we all agree with this. So when you go into a lab to do a PhD, LLMs are a good direction, but choose what I would invest on is to understand. If I use the word understand, I really want to understand what the systems do, not what they understand. How do they? When I say to my Sicilian LLM, quanti anni avevi la picciota? Old is the girl. It predicts one word, but it's pre-activating other words, right? So I want to understand these words which are almost there, although not the winning one. Are they related to the meanings? Which part of the meanings? If we do this reasoning chain, right? How are things being prepared?
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. Very, very nice. In what you are saying, you are always kind of implying that the human intelligence or human cognitive is best somehow. But what really imply that human intelligence should be used as a reference? Now we have completely different means. Maybe there is a completely different way of learning and understanding and intelligence. So do you think that we should look also different paradigm that human intelligence when we play with these things?
Yes. So why do I think this? Because in this planet, right, we are aware of these intelligent systems. A dog is as good as a human, from my point of view, right? If we can build elephants don't play chess. It's a paper by Rodney Brooks that says, instead of doing chess playing in AI, let's do simple motor control. So there are many components which are important, not only in humans. So we have this solution, and if I can build a 10-year-old child, right, with less data, with less training time, with less energy consumption, it might be good. Of course, there are other ways. My early history, when I started to do research, I was part of animal modeling. And there was a field called artificial life. There is still a mini community there, artificial life. The idea was to build simulated hardware forms of life which don't exist. So artificial life didn't mean artificial intelligence. It meant I invent a new type of animal which uses 3 wings instead of 2, because I want to understand how flying works. Another area within the field is creating artificial cells. So we have this cell in our planet with specific structure, the nucleus, the membrane, and so on. Maybe there are other forms of cells, forms of life. So by bias, we know humans are also, I'm a psychologist, but animal and humans, for me, they are in the same plane in terms of interest. But there is also another very simple consideration, which is sustainability energy. I think it's inconceivable the cost of training and doing inference. Why is it inconceivable? Because remember, when you ask me how old is the girl, I do, let's say, 1 inference, whatever it means in my short-term memory. In the system, if you have prompts or context of millions of words now, every time you do the inference, which is a chain, you have to activate 1 million tokens in input, +1, +1, +1. So it's a no-exit way. Another example I'd like to share with colleagues, and we all agree, if you give a student 10 GPU machines, right, they can do a lot of work, But if you give them 10, they will ask for 20. If you give them 20, they will want 40 because you can do more things. But that's not the way to do it, I think. The principles of simplicity, it's very important in science. A model should explain with the minimum, including why humans if we can do an animal. That's why for me, I model C. elegans. It's an animal, a worm with 302 neurons. So my dream is to have a robotic version of a C. elegans that can do exactly what a C. elegans can do. If we can do this, this is a Nobel Prize. Building 302 neurons of a worm that can eat, reproduce, have sex and reproduce, can move around, can learn. There is habituation, some mechanism of learning. This is exceptional. So not only humans, or aliens.
Thank you for your wonderful talk. I think your basic idea is to let the robot learn through real-world interaction. I think theoretically this is a very natural idea from those of humans, but we all know practically this real-world interaction will cost a lot of money and time. So it's almost impossible to scale up and collect a lot of data. So in real industry and application, how can you solve this problem?
Okay, I would say 2 or 3 things. One, a scientist or R&D, basic R&D level, we should look at this fundamental mechanism, especially public universities, public organizations. We have public money, taxpayer money, state money, so we should really invest our time in this, in addition to collaborating with industries, of course. If you are an industry, you want to exploit some of these mechanisms, but please, Elon Musk and friends, don't come and tell me you will achieve AGI. You tell me I will achieve some level of generalization with my data, and I don't believe the dream, the more data, the better in the sense you will solve the problem. So let's be realistic, including, let's be realistic for our expectation in society that what a robot can do in the short term, 5 years, is not what sometimes we give the impression we can do, right? In 20 years' time, if I think what happens before the smartphones were invented, we couldn't think of this. So maybe in 20 years, but in 5 years' time, we have to be realistic. A robot can do limited things, but some of these things can be done efficiently. In the past, there were robotic arms right in factories. Now you can have robotics working in semi-constrained environments, not in fully open environments.
Due to the time schedule, maybe we need to stop here and let's thank the speaker again.
Thank you.